Hi, I'm Mindy, the natural dyer at Henley Handmade. Welcome to our knitting chair chat. Today I am taking on the challenging subject of sustainable knitting or eco-friendly knitting. Big topic, I know. It's no secret that being a creative, just about of any type, generates waste. And sometimes a lot of it. But today I want to narrow us down specifically to the fiber arts and knitting most specifically, because that's my personal specialty. Let's start by defining sustainable knitting. So, what do I mean? Sustainability, eco-friendly, eco-conscious, earth-friendly, environmentally friendly. There's so many different words for it, and they all have their slightly unique definitions. But the way I define sustainable knitting is the practice of being intentional with our supplies, our tools, our accessories, in a way that minimizes their environmental impact so as to be able to continue knitting for all of us. Okay, so that's kind of a working definition, but that's kind of where I'm landing right now. We have to be forward thinkers, right? We need to be forward thinkers. Okay, so the mere fact that you are a maker, I'm assuming you're a maker of some sort if you are here watching this video, but the mere fact that we are making our things creates a more sustainable way of life. The fact of the matter is that commercially made just about anything is almost always going to generate more waste and be more harmful to our environment than small scale making. The exception to this might be a truly eco-focused company, like in a made-to-order kind of situation. But think about the sheer quantity of items made for even just one store. Let's take the example of a t-shirt, because that's the one that I see a lot, running around in this conversation, but a basic t-shirt. So even if the company making this t-shirt uses environmentally friendly fabrics, it's dyed in an eco-friendly way, the company itself boasts one of the environmental badges for manufacturing, even then, the t-shirt will likely end up as just one of many, perhaps dozens of t-shirts in a consumer's closet, not being worn as often as a handmade item might be. At least that's the case in my wardrobe. And then it ends up in a landfill after, the annual closet purge. And we haven't discussed what happens with the leftovers that weren't sold from the stores. Actually, there's quite a few more things that we could talk about here, but let's try to keep it simpler today. So first off, I want to say well done, you, for pouring your time, your energy, and your money into making instead of buying, at least part of the time. But let's hone in on knitting specifically now. What can we do as knitters to create a more sustainable knitting practice? Okay, I came up with a list of 7 things. They're not all inclusive, but let's start here. Number 1, focus your knitting on projects that you or someone else will truly use. Okay, this includes things that are decorative, in case you're wondering. So, for example, the gorgeous throw that you made for your sofa. That's totally an in-use item, even if it's never sits on somebody's lap. It's still an in-use item, okay? We need beautiful things in our lives to make us happy and feel joy and be comfortable. So decorative items totally count here. I'm not excluding decorative items by any means. So, okay, I'm also a realist. Do we hit it out of the park with every project we knit? Absolutely not. But the key here is to knit the things you think you'll love and use most. So if you live in Florida, maybe take a pass on knitting heavyweight sweaters. But if you really do love making hand knit sweaters, heavyweight sweaters, find somebody who lives in Minnesota maybe and see if they would really appreciate one of your handmade sweaters. But do make sure that they would actually wear it, because then it just ends up in somebody else's closet not being worn, right? So the key here is to make something with a purpose, even if that purpose is purely decorative. And this brings me to my next point. Number 2, if your knitting project doesn't turn out, or if for whatever reason you're not using it or not using it anymore, frog it, just take out the knitting and find another purpose for the yarn. And I'm a little guilty here because I have a few things that I really love, but I don't wear. So I need to revisit that. One of them is what I was calling my house sweater in a previous video. I'll add that up in case you want to watch it. But one of the beautiful and somewhat unique facets of knitting is that we can almost always take our yarn out and reuse the yarn for something else. So this isn't true for, say, a lot of fabric work. You know, if you're sewing, you're cutting the fabric. Once it's cut, it's cut. Woodworking, also kind of true. You know, once you cut the wood, you cut the wood. And of course, there are always ways to recycle and upcycle pieces of just about anything. But with knitting, it's pretty easy to be able to do. So let's make something that you will use or will love with that yarn. Rip out the yarn, wind it around the back of a chair, tie it off, add some extra ties throughout the loops so that you don't get a big tangly mess, soak it in some water, hang it to dry. If it's really kinked, you might want to add a weight, hang a weight from the bottom of the loop while it dries, and that will help smooth out the kinks. And then let it dry, wind it back up into a ball, and use it for something else. It's pretty amazing what we can do with our yarn and how resilient it is. So give that a good think and see if there's maybe a way that you can reuse some of the yarn from projects that are just sitting in a drawer or sitting in a box even that you aren't using anymore. So, okay, it does take a bit of effort, right? Kind of, you know, it'll take a few days maybe to be able to fully get your yarn back, but you know, why hang on to something that you no longer want or use or love when you can transform it into something new and beautiful and something that you can once again appreciate and love? So let's talk about number 3. Love and appreciate your stash. But if it's no longer bringing you joy, consider donating or selling what you don't love anymore. Totally guilty on this one. I love yarn. Obviously, I wouldn't be a yarn dyer if I didn't totally love yarn, right? I view my stash like I would an art collection. It brings me joy to collect beautiful things in the form of yarn. I love to look at it. I love to squish it. I love to dream up all the possibilities for it. It brings me comfort knowing that I have it. If we ever fell into difficult financial times, I know I could pull from my stash and keep my hands busy through the tough times, that whole knitting therapy. My point is that I get it. Okay, I get it. But you know what else I love about my stash? I love that when some of it no longer feels like something that I might use or something that brings me joy and comfort, I can give it to someone else who does need that joy and comfort. A friend and fellow fiber business owner, Dawn of Twice Sheared Sheep, she did something absolutely beautiful in 2020. When the pandemic hit, she organized a massive yarn yarn stash exchange. Well, not exactly an exchange, but she basically connected people who had stash that they could give to people who needed some stash to get them through the pandemic. It was brilliant and beautiful. And I almost wonder if I shouldn't organize another one, because that was so fun to be a part of. Be open to letting go of what no longer brings you joy. Kind of a lesson for life here, right? As the famous Marie Kondo says, ask yourself if it sparks joy. And I might be overemphasizing this point, but bringing joy may come in the form of something beautiful to look at. So take this, hopefully you can take this as I'm intending it. Okay, number 4, purchase the supplies you need and share the rest. Okay, this kind of fits with the stash point. I'm talking specifically about the tools and the knitting needles, the accessories, that maybe you just don't use anymore. Maybe you've outgrown them. Maybe they were tools that you bought when you were a beginner and you've upgraded, or maybe your preference has changed. So for me personally, I really loved metal needles when I first started, and now I love the feel of wood in my hands. So, and I almost never use those metal needles. So I can pass those on to somebody who loves metal needles, because I know there are tons of knitters out there who love metal needles. So that's just another example of how we can be a little more sustainable with our knitting practice by passing on our excess tools. I have a small box of knitting accessories that I almost never use, and I bet there are knitters at different points in their knitting journey who would appreciate and absolutely use them. So, something to consider. And speaking of tools, number 5, choose quality, sustainable tools, knitting tools, whenever you can. Okay, not every knitting tool is created equal. We all know this, right? It's why we become diehard Chiaogu needles fans, or why we only use circular needles, or only use wooden needles or metal needles, or whatever, wherever your preferences fall. But the next time you're on the hunt for a knitting needle or a tool, take a few minutes to learn about the company. Most companies have quite a bit of information online these days, so you can take a peek at their website, and you can always pop them an email as well, just to find out a little more about their business practices and their business ethics, because that's important too. Are they doing their part to promote sustainable knitting? Are they trying to be an earth-friendly business? And what are they doing? Right? What is it that they're really doing? And the truth of the matter is, we can purchase nearly everything in plastic form, which we know does not biodegrade well. So, we can choose alternatives when we can. The alternatives, let me back up for a second. Still, the best choice is buying the product that you use, that you'll truly use, right? So if you have the choice between a plastic tool and a wood tool, but you know that you're not going to use that wood tool, and you know that you'll use the plastic tool, I believe that the better choice there is to choose the plastic tool, because you know that you're going to use it, and you're going to make use of that plastic. Okay, I think now it's more critical than ever to really peek into business practices of the companies that we use and know and love, because I believe in voting with our dollars. I think that's really what it comes down to. How things will change. Well, how things will change is through knitting with our dollars, through voting with our dollars. Okay, number 6. Choose the most sustainable knitting yarns you know and can afford. Okay, you had to know this one was coming with me being a natural dyer, right? But I urge you to choose fibers that biodegrade, such as cotton, linen, wool, alpaca. Skip the superwash treatment if you can, if you absolutely need it, that's one thing. But skip it whenever you can, and find yarn with a more eco-friendly method of making their yarn. Or making their yarn washable. So there are a few companies out there who claim to have a more eco-friendly superwash method. So you can just do your research. I started to look into this a little bit when I was kind of sketching out my video here, and they're hard to find. They're hard to find. And again, you have to decide what is most important. What is most important? There are quite a few yarn companies who use recycled materials, which is really cool. So there are options out there for sure. Okay, choose yarn spun from domestic flocks. I'm biased here, right? Because I use Mountain Meadow wool for the yarn that I dye at Henley Handmade. But it is possible. It is possible to find yarn from domestic flocks, and it may even be possible to find just even in a lot closer to you than you might think. So my friend Erin of Crafty Housewife Yarns, she runs a website that specializes in exactly this. It's designed to connect the knitter and the crocheter, fiber enthusiast with small batch type yarns and farms. So I'll link that website for you down below. And you can find all sorts of family farms selling beautiful yarn from their small flocks right in their own backyard. So it's a cool website. Another larger company that I can think of off the top of my head, and their claim to fame is providing the yarn for the U.S. winter athletes for the Olympic Games in I'll have to double check on the year, but it was early 2000s, I believe. And that's Imperial Stock Ranch. And they have some great yarn options too. And then the other aspect when we're talking about yarn is the dye, of course. I obviously am going to plug natural dyes because they come from Mother Earth, right? They're not manufactured in a lab. They come from Mother Earth. They're renewable and a far more sustainable choice in most cases. But take some time to learn about natural dyes and how they can help you create a more sustainable knitting practice. I think you'll like what you find. So, okay, my last point is number 7, and that is to use up your bits and bobs. I love watching all the knitting pattern releases around December and January with the popularity of the yarn advent calendars in the recent years. I've loved seeing how knitwear designers are working to create patterns designed to use up small bits of yarn. We all have leftover yarn from our projects, and what a great thing to do, but use it in another project or in another way. So it's only when the stars completely align, right, that you end up using every foot of your yarn. That doesn't happen very often. So if you knit, you have partial skeins lying around. Find a way to use them. My kids are always coming to me for pieces of string for their various games and creations that they play when they're playing. So I have a jar of yarn that is for them, that they can come and pull out the string, like, they're like, pull out, nope, this one's too long, nope, this one's too short. And they know that they can just have whatever they want from the jar. There's also other things that you can do. You can save them to use as like stuffing for a stuffy that you make, or a pillow maybe. You might have to save for a while for something big like a pillow, but you could even use that to supplement your other stuffing that you use when you're stuffing things that you make. So, okay, so there we have it. 7 ways to build a more sustainable knitting practice. This is a list and of just my ideas. It's not comprehensive by any means, but I do feel like it's a good place to start. When we all do what we can, we work together, do what we can, I really do think that we can make a difference, that we really truly can. Just by choosing carefully, being intentional with our purchases, and how we knit, using what we have already, and, seeking out environmentally friendly businesses, products and businesses. I really do think that knitters can help contribute to a healthier, safer place for us and future generations. And let me mention here, anything you do can help. Anything you do is a move in the right direction. This isn't an all or nothing situation, is it? You don't have to do all the things to help do your part. I know it's tempting, at least it's tempting for me to feel like I'm not doing enough and, just kind of throw my hands up in the air and say, oh, well, but I think the beauty is in making even small changes. Even small changes can be important and make a difference. So I'm definitely not perfect. I've done things in my personal life and in my knitting life to help guide myself towards, knitting in a more eco-friendly way, in a more sustainable way. But I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect at all. I've used superwash yarn. I've used acrylic yarns. I'm not perfect by any means. So I encourage you to give it your best shot with no judgment. No judgment coming from me. Okay. So help me out. What am I forgetting? I feel like there's probably something that I'm forgetting. And let me know, do you disagree with any of the points that I've made? What are you doing to create a more sustainable knitting practice? Or are you? Maybe you don't feel that it's important, or maybe you feel that what you could do isn't going to make a difference. But I'd love to hear all of your tips and tricks, your thoughts down below in the comments. Let's work together to show our planet how much we love her. Thank you so much for watching today. If you'd like to check out my selection of naturally dyed US yarn, I'll include the link for Henlea Handmade down below. And if you're new to Henlea Handmade, I'd love to give you 20% off to give naturally dyed yarn a try. I'll link that down below as well. And if you're looking to join the kindest, most friendly group of knitters, I'd love for you to join the Knit Mini Together community. It's only $5 and helps keep Henlea Handmade running and keeps me able to move forward with more videos like this one. So I'll link that one down below as well. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please give my video a like. If you would like to see more videos from me, subscribe and hit the notifications bell. Those two things really help my business gain more visibility, and I'm really appreciative for any of you that take the time to do that for me. So thanks again for watching. Have a wonderfully woolly day.